Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grower Podcast. My name's Richard and I want to encourage and inspire you to grow more of your own food. And I do this by sharing what I've been up to on my own allotment and my own garden. Now this week is a very, very special episode, I have to say. It's our 600th episode. And to reach 600 episodes, we've been recording since 2013, so I've been at this for a very, very long time. But to reach 600 episodes in the podcast world is a massive milestone. Many podcasts are lucky to even get past 10 episodes, let alone 50 episodes or into the hundreds. So I'm going to give myself a bit of a pat on the back for doing this. But more importantly, I want to give you, the listener, a pat on the back for listening as well, because I honestly could not do this if you guys were not listening and giving me all the feedback and all the information and encouragement I need along the way, especially members of our supporters club. Now for the 600 episodes, we're going to start off down on the allotment where I am at the moment. Back at home, we've got a competition going on with a Hotbin and a Dalek. That's a bit of an experiment. I'm going to tell you about that. But at the end of this week's podcast, I also have a competition coming up where you can win tickets to Gardener's World Spring Fair. Details on that a little bit later on. First of all, what's been going on down on the allotment this week? Well, I'm down on the allotment at the moment, as I say. Now, this week, it has been really, really lovely to visit the allotment after work. Last week, the clocks changed, which meant we have lighter evenings. And it's a very, very welcome change, I have to say, because lighter evenings, more time in the evening to visit the allotment, can see what we're doing, and we can really make the most of just a few minutes every day. Little and often, something that I bang on about a lot. But the other really good thing about this week is that we have had the sun out, and it has really, really lifted everybody's spirits. Everyone seems happier, but the warmth and all the plants, including weeds, have benefited from it. So it's really has made a massive change over this last week. My garlic, particularly, I've noticed, is looking so much happier and is growing quite significantly. Now the downside of all this, especially on Friday where we were reaching 22C, 24C, it was a very, very warm day. We've still got quite a breeze coming in as well. That has meant the soil has been drying out quite a bit. So I have had to do quite a bit of watering to try and make sure that our plants don't get dehydrated. Now, when we dig down, the soil is actually quite damp when we get down about 2-3 centimetres. So there's plenty of room for roots to work their way down and find that water. The trouble is, at this time of year, our plants are young. The roots generally seem to be at the very top of the soil. We, of course, want to encourage them to go down because stronger roots, deeper roots, better plants. But when we first plant out our plants, they need to get that hold on top of them. So there has been a lot of watering going on, and there will be a lot of watering as we plant out more and more plants. But one of the things that I like to do when it comes to watering is, instead of watering daily, I like to give my beds a really, really good drink once a week. Maybe a bit more in the summer when it gets really hot, but at this time of year, a really, really good drink once a week, plus the application of a mulch, that seems to work really quite well. So I normally 2 watering cans is enough to water one of my beds, but when I give them a really, really good drink, we're looking at 6 watering cans. A lot of water, but it benefits the soil much better. Now today I've been working on the allotment, and I've actually been tackling a few tasks that have been on my hit list for a while. But one of the things I've really noticed is that nature is coming out. I've seen my first ladybirds, I've seen my first bumblebee today, so nature is coming out. And in fact, when I look at my pear tree, that is absolutely full of blossom. So nature is out, everything is coming together. We need to get our plants in. And that's something I have been doing today. So today I came down here, I've planted out a few more of our overwintered onions and even some of our winter sown onions, just to get those in the ground. Gave them a good drinking, as I've already said, but they're in the ground and hopefully they're going to go on to produce some good crops. I'm very late with this, got some of my overwintered broad beans in the ground as well. Now, normally, like I said with onions a couple of weeks ago, I plant my broad beans in the ground before winter. What I did this year is I actually started them off in root trainers, and they've been sat in my greenhouse, growing quite well, but they've been sat in my greenhouse and I think they are going to be a little bit behind. So I got them out into the ground today, gave them again a really, really good watering. Hopefully they're going to produce. The good thing with broad beans, of course, I do overwinter them, but what I will find is that they will still produce later on in the year regardless, because we can actually sow broad beans in the spring and they will be absolutely fine. I still could do that actually. I've got a room in that broad bean bed to add a few more. Now, talking of our bean beds, because we have 3 bean beds this year, 1 being for the broad beans, the other 2 are going to be for our other beans, our cannellini beans, our French beans, our runner beans. The 2 beds have been covered over with cardboard over winter, but I've been looking at the cardboard and just thinking it looks rubbish. It looks naff. It's fine on the allotment, don't get me wrong. We can get away with it a bit more on the allotment, but it does look a little bit horrible. And really, we're going to start using those beds next month. But I've lifted up the cardboard, ran the hoe through the bed just to remove any weeds. And when I was doing this, what my plan was, because there's still a few weeks to go before beans can really be planted, I was going to just sow a load of green manures into both of these beds, because I do like using my green manures, particularly Phacelia, which is one of my favourite green manures. Phacelia for me, really fast, big growing plant. Bees love it, and it shades out all the couch grass and the weeds. It has a wide range of benefits, and that's why I do use it quite a bit. But the trouble I've used it for years and I've just not really thought what would be the difference if I just hoed a bed instead while it was empty. So what I decided to do, 1 bed it's been cleared and I've sown in some Phacelia, and the other bed, what I'm going to do between now and then is every day we're going to hoe that bed to try and make sure that weeds never grow. And then we want to see if actually Phacelia does make a big difference. It's going to be an interesting experiment, as I said, because I've always done green manures, or certainly in recent years I found the benefits of them, but is that just me? I want to do a bit more of a scientific experiment to see the difference. There's allotment. You can probably hear there's a lot more going on in the background. It's starting to feel full of life as people are returning to their allotments after the winter slumber. Don't blame them in this sun, it's absolutely lovely. We've recorded a lot of podcasts on this allotment, and we're going to record many, many more. Anyway, it is time now to head on home. In the meantime, let's find out what's been going on in the Supporters Club this week. I'm just interrupting this podcast quickly and just to ask if you would be good enough to leave a rating and review on your podcast provider. Only takes you a few seconds, but it means the world to us and helps us get found by more people who might also be interested in learning how to grow their own food. But not only that, this podcast is able to keep running with thanks to the kind support we get from members of our Supporters Club. And if you are enjoying this podcast, then perhaps you would consider becoming a member of our Supporters Club as well. I would really appreciate it. Now, for just £5 a month, you get access to extra behind-the-scenes podcasts that give you a bit of an idea of what's going on here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ. But not only that, you also get a collection of seeds sent to your door every month, and these seeds can be sown in that very month. Along with the seeds, you also get a copy of our mini newspaper, which gives you a bit of guidance on how to sow those seeds. Now, as an example, this week we've been sowing some coriander seeds, which every month I try to include a single herb. This month it was coriander, and it's one of our, well, I call it a Marmite herb. Some people love it, some people hate it. Reason for that is genetics. It all depends on your genes, because to some people it tastes like soap. Now, if that is something you would be interested in joining, then please head to theveggrowpodcast.co.uk to find out more. Well, I'm back in the kitchen garden now, and I have already mentioned that this first week of April, the weather has been pretty warm, but also pretty dry. And I'm actually starting to get a little concerned with just how dry it has been. We're starting to see cracks appear into areas of our garden in the ground where we don't water. These would be areas like the lawn areas where we don't really worry too much because it's just a lawn. We're more worried about watering our vegetables. But this is a little concerning, to say the least. So we've got to keep an eye on things, and hopefully we would get some rain soon. A good rain shower overnight would be very, very welcome. But one of the real concerning things is with my rhubarb. Now, rhubarb, it started growing, of course, this year. It's a fantastic vegetable. We've actually harvested a couple of stalks already. But one of the signs that has given me a bit of concern is the fact that the rhubarb has started to pot up a flower spike. Now, this is a good sign that the rhubarb is in stress, and this could be due to the warm weather, the dry weather, either one of those. Luckily, it's only one of the 4 plants I have here at home. And it's not the end of the world. All I've got to do is snap off that flower spike and give everything a good watering. It's not uncommon for my rhubarb to flower, to be honest, or to pot up a flower spike. If we leave it to flower, of course, all that energy goes into the flower instead of producing rhubarb, so snapping it off is just an easy thing we can do. Throughout this week, I've also been potting up a lot more of my young plants. And actually, my veg trug nursery that I put up last week, that has proven to work really, really well. It's given me plenty more space, freed up my kitchen table quite well, and it seems to be holding on quite well to the heat and keeping our plants in there very, very well looked after. However, the grow house that I've had for probably, well, I got back in January actually, it has been getting a little bit too hot in the sun, I've noticed. And what that has meant is that some of our plants have just been getting a little scorched and a little dry. This seems to be only on the top shelf, but it does just goes to show how hot it gets inside of it. Luckily, all I've been doing to counteract that is just popping the lid open during the day and closing it down at night. Doesn't seem to be too much of a problem. It's just another thing that we have to do. Now, the big project for this weekend is something that I talk a lot about, and that is producing compost. I talk a lot about producing compost because we do need a lot of it. We do need to produce a lot of it. We have lots of compost bins, be it my wormery, my sub pod, or my Dalek compost bins. But because we need so much of it, I have lots of Dalek bins. And my problem I have with Dalek bins is that I think they are ugly looking things. They really stand out to me. They look horrible, and they're cheap and cheerful really when it comes to Daleks. They do the job, but they are a bit cheap and cheerful. Well, back in episode 248, which was recorded back in 2019, all those years ago, I actually interviewed a couple of people called Andy and Sue, and they were from a company called Hotbin. Now, what they spoke to me about on that time was Hotbin composting, which is a product that they make, these rather large compost bins that, as the name suggests, hold on to heat and produce a very good quality compost. And I always wanted, after that conversation, to try a Hotbin compost out. Unfortunately, COVID kind of got in the way. This is how far back we are going now. COVID got in the way, and then I never really got back into it? Well, recently I've actually contacted the Hotbin company, and in particular Andy once again. We're going to get him back on the podcast in a few weeks' time. And what we wanted to do was actually set up a trial of Hotbin versus Dalek. Now, this is a very simple premise. We're going to simply run a 200 litre Hotbin and a 200 litre Dalek, going to treat them both in exactly the same way, and we're going to see what produces the most compost, what produces the fastest compost, and what produces the best compost. Haven't quite figured out how we're going to test out the best compost, but you get the idea. Now, this weekend I actually set up the Hotbin, and it was fairly an easy thing to do. What I did is I placed an empty Dalek bin in one position, and then next to that I placed the Hotbin plinth, just ensuring that that Hotbin plinth was level. Now, the plinth itself is actually quite important because it allows ventilation through the Hotbin. The Hotbin is going to get hot because of the bacterial breakdown of the matter, and that means that heat, that air, is going to really produce ventilation and produce, hopefully, a good quality compost. Then once the plinth was completely in position and I was happy with it, I then placed the Hotbin itself onto the plinth. Really easy. It took me literally minutes. Not even that, seconds really. Really easy. The only thing I had to do inside the Hotbin was a bag that contained a few bits, and in that bag was some tie wraps. These were like ratchet tie wraps. Just place that around the bottom of the compost bin in order to keep the door closed. With all the weight of the compost that can go into this, it's possible the door could be pushed open. So these straps are there just to help with that. Now, also inside the bag was, of course, instructions and a thermometer, which is a composting thermometer, and a bottle that we fill with hot water when it gets cold in order to keep the bacteria going. This isn't something we need to worry about at the moment, but the thermometer is going to play a key part. So we got that all set up. We placed some twigs, shredded paper and wood chip in the bottom of both compost bins in equal levels. Now, this is going to be a key thing because we're going to have to add equal levels of all materials in both compost bins at the same time. On top of this, I then added some lawn clippings, again in equal levels in both bins, and then I pushed into each of these a compost thermometer. Now, the one that came with the Hotbin, of course, went in the Hotbin. I actually already had a compost thermometer. It's something I highly recommend if you want to see how well your compost is doing. A compost thermometer, really cheap thing to buy, but really useful. And you just stick it into your compost and you can see how much heat is generated. When it starts to cool down, that's when you need to mix your compost material if you're in a Dalek style compost bin. And that's why a compost thermometer is really useful. Anyway, the thermometers are in place. The Hotbin actually has another thermometer in the lid as well as a vent. So this is going to give you a good idea of the temperature at the top of the Hotbin, and the vent is there just to, again, help with that airflow. So that is the trial started. Moving forward, what we're going to have to do is just keep placing equal quantities of materials in both bins. And this is going to be, if I cut the lawn, half of the lawn clippings go in the Hotbin, the other half go in the Dalek. If I shred some trees, half goes in the Hotbin, half goes in the Dalek, because we're going to need to get that green and brown mixture of materials just right. Kitchen waste as well, half of that in the Dalek, half of that in the Hotbin. I've got to admit, normally when it comes to kitchen waste, I place that inside my wormery because I feel that reduces the risk of rodents. But for the name of this experiment, and I know the Hotbin should be quite good at reducing the risk of rodents, I think we're going to keep putting kitchen waste into that as well. Now, the Hotbin actually works by bacteria breaking down the material, which is why it produces heat. It's not using worms, it's not using anything like that. It's heat that produces the compost. And the theory is, because the Hotbin is insulated, it holds on to the heat, and it means that in theory we should be able to produce compost in as little as 30 days. We're going to find out if that actually happens. I'm pretty certain it will, if all the science adds up and all the tests that people have done in the past adds up. But how does it compare to the Dalek at the same time? In theory, and I don't want to jump to conclusions, but what I'm expecting is that the Hotbin will produce more compost faster than the Dalek compost. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but that is what I'm expecting. What we're going to do, obviously, keep track of the materials that we're adding, keep track of how much compost we're moving, keep track of the temperatures as well and see how that affects things. One of the things that the Hotbin also has is a little container where it collects some liquid that is runoff from the compost, much like my wormery. So what we're also going to do with that is see how much of this liquid we get from the Hotbin in comparison to the wormery. And that liquid can be used as a plant fertiliser. So we want to see how much actual liquid as well we want to get in comparison to the wormery. A lot of trials, a lot of experiments that are going to be going on. It's going to be a lot of fun and I'm looking forward to seeing how it works out. This is obviously, again, one of these long-term tests. We're going to run this experiment for at least 6 months for the season, basically. So we'll probably see the results October time, maybe even later. But ultimately, this is going to continue on throughout. One of the things that I personally really like, and I've already said I do not like the look of Daleks. But for me, looking at this Hotbin right now, it just looks a little less intrusive. Looks a little bit better because it just looks less intrusive. So that for me is something quite encouraging. Right, with that, I'm going to head on into the podding shed because it's time to talk about a competition that I have running for you. In the meantime, let's find out what Chef Scott has for us. That's Roxy in the background. In the meantime, let's find out what Chef Scott has for us this week.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef Scott with the magic, smells are everywhere. Water starts to boil, onions hit the pan. Recipe of the week, let the feast begin. Cooking with Chef Scott, flavors come alive. Tune in every week for a tasty bite.
Hi, it's Scott here with this week's recipe. And this week we have the seed of the month recipe. And with the seed being pumpkin, I thought I would share one of my all-time favourite soups. Pumpkin, peanut and coconut soup. For me, a truly perfect combination of flavours, and with its satay vibes. So, let's not delay and head to the kitchen and hear how it's made. As usual, you can find this recipe and others on the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk and on my Instagram page, Seed to Table Plot 13. For this recipe, you will need 800 grams of diced pumpkin, 200 grams of diced white onion, 3 cloves of garlic peeled, 15 grams of sliced ginger, 1 red chilli chopped, 1 tin of coconut milk, 550 millilitres of chicken or vegetable stock, the juice of 1 lime, and 1 tablespoon of peanut butter. Method: add everything minus the coconut milk, stock, peanut butter and lime to a roasting tray and season with salt and pepper and drizzle with olive oil. And roast in a preheated oven set at 190 degrees Celsius for 30 to 40 minutes, or until the pumpkin is tender. Then add it all to a pan with the stock, coconut milk, peanut butter and lime and bring to a boil. Then turn down and simmer for 15 minutes. Then blitz with a stick blender or liquidizer. And that's the recipe done, and that's it from me this week.
I have to admit, I thought Scott was going to struggle to come up with a recipe. Scott often, when he comes up with a recipe for the week, he actually makes them in that very week so that he can actually share the recipe pretty much the same week that he's made it. Also the photos and everything that he shares with us as well. If you go check out his Instagram channel, you'll see exactly what I mean. To come up with a pumpkin recipe at the beginning of April, just when we're sowing the seeds, is absolutely incredible. Scott, blown it out the water once again. Thank you very, very much. But now it is competition time. And in just a few weeks' time, less than a month, it will be time to go to Gardener's World Spring Fair. I'm looking forward to this show. It's an event I go to most years. It's one that I really, really do enjoy. And it is on the 2nd and 3rd and the 4th of May. And if you want to go on the Sunday, the 4th of May for a 9:30 entry, then you could be in with a chance to win a pair of tickets. So it could be you and a mate going down to Bewley in the New Forest. Look at some cars and look at some gardening. To be in with a chance to enter this competition, all you got to do is email me with details of what the Hotbin is made of. What is the main component of Hotbin made out of? Email me, richard@theveggrowpodcast.co.uk if you want to be in with a chance to win tickets to this event. If you are not wanting to go on the Sunday, but you still want to go and you want to save 10%, then you can also use a discount code SAVE10. That's all in one word, SAVE10, and you could save 10% off your tickets. I personally am looking forward to go. I will probably be going on the Friday, not on the Sunday, but I have always enjoyed going to Gardener's World Spring Fair. I've been going for a number of years now, and I thoroughly enjoy it. It feels like it's just as the weekend kicks off. I believe that weekend is also a bank holiday weekend, so you still have the Monday to spend a bit more time in the garden. So just a few terms and conditions. Of course, the decision will be mine. Everybody that enters, their name will go into a hat, and I will choose one winner at random who will be in with a chance. Closing date is the 17th of April 2025. So you've got 10 days from the day of this podcast being released to get in touch with your entry. Promise you, you will have a good time, especially if you like your gardening and you like your cars. More details will be at theveggrowpodcast.co.uk, of course, or the blog post for this episode. Well, I think it's time to wrap this podcast up. If you have enjoyed it, and I hope you have, then please do rate and review on your podcast provider. We've actually had a couple of reviews come in over on Spotify. Lynn, as always, says, "Hi Richard, about my pond." She mentioned last week about ponds, and I wondered how fish got in her pond. She said that she has heard that birds can carry fish eggs on their feet/legs, and that's how they are introduced into different ponds and rivers. She also goes on to say she gave Scott's pea guacamole a try for lunch. It's absolutely delicious, and she's also recommended a book of the month, and she recommended Green Nature by Kathy Willis. A very good chapter about gardening and allotments. However, I'll come into that in just a moment. Colin has also left a comment. Colin in Ireland, who's just signed up to be a supporting member as well. She says, "Another fantastic podcast, Richard. I've been binge listening over this last weekend and I am loving the podcast. Great to find a podcast for beginners and veteran gardeners alike. Every day is a school day. You have encouraged me to start in my garden to hopefully produce food for my family. Everyone should join a supporters club. The amount of work that goes into this podcast creation by Richard, I think seems reasonable for the price to support the podcast. Keep up the good work." Thank you very much for some very, very kind words there, Colin. Now, on that note, I have chosen a book of the month for this month, for April, and it's actually written by Chaz from Chaz and Dave, the old rock singers. I've ordered this book from Amazon. I'm waiting for it to turn up, but it is called Chaz and His Rock and Roll Allotment. So it should be an interesting read, to say the least. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, you want to help support the work that we do, please consider becoming a member of our supporters club. The details on that are theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk, which is, of course, our website. Through our website, you can also send us a message. You can send us also a comment at the bottom of a blog post, and you can also send us a voicemail using our SpeakPipe service. It's free to use, but it always means the world to us. You can of course get in touch by email, richard@theveggrowpodcast.co.uk, or you can find me on social media. We will be back again next time, so until then, please take care.